I'm recording a video about the evolution of our space today, of our garden, small homesteading, micro-smallholding between 2013, when we first looked at the place, and the very beginning of 2019, the end of 2018, because that's when I started making YouTube videos ever so often so that you can see what happened with the space afterwards. And that's when we really kicked into gear. So to do this, I've gone back through all my photos and I've filtered out all the garden ones and put them in this video. There's very little footage, I'm afraid. It's all static photographs. So what I thought I would do is that I watch the video of all the photographs and kind of comment as we go along and talk to you on camera, and then you can see that at the same time. And it's quite an emotional thing seeing it all. Lots of personal stuff happened in that time, and I'll talk about it a little bit. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this. Okay, so we looked at this place in 2013. This is how it was advertised. And we were particularly taken by the notion of greenhouse with separate shed and large front garden with veg beds, soft fruit bushes, the orchard and so on. And this is what the space looks like. The bit at the bottom, the bit that says oak cottage, is where our main food garden is now. And you can see the lane divides our two bits of our land in two. This is the view out of the window when we looked around the place. You can see it's lawn and shrubs, and it had been mowed, and that's when we moved there in May 2013. The cat enjoyed it, and it was fine. It was fairly neat on the surface, but once you started looking closer, you could tell that they really hadn't done that much, and that it must have been a really thriving veg garden once upon a time, but it wasn't. And it'd been a while since it'd been that. So there's lots of trees, there's lots of shrubs that didn't do very much, lots of big things, and you can just about see the greenhouse there. This was the remaining veg bed, which the previous owner had put some potatoes in for us, which is very kind, and just some bits and pieces left around. This is our little apple tree that we put in when we first got there. Those are the lilacs, the lilac grove they do there every year. And this is the little apple tree again. Such a happy little thing. This is the middle strip. This would be looking down at the two large grow houses now. And this is the potatoes. So that's what we grew that first year when we were there. I don't really have any other pictures from 2013 because we're really busy. I taught abroad for a few weeks in the summer. We just never got going. I'm just really busy with work and everything else. So nothing happens other than growing those potatoes. And that was nice, and we enjoyed that. And we thought, oh, we would love to do more with this, but that's where we left it. So 2014 is when things got going a bit. So let's see how that pans out. So 2014, this is the spring. We discovered there were loads and loads of beautiful spring bulbs. We took down the rhododendron. It was the size of this patch here, and it was just absolutely massive. And we started cutting back a lot of those pointless granny shrubs that annoyed us. Cut back lots of brambles. This is a theme throughout the year. We planted our first strawberry patch, which was very exciting. They've moved a lot, and we put some rhubarb in as well, which has been very nice. We started pruning some of the trees that really needed it. And you can see the location of the strawberry bed there. It's down at the bottom, roughly where the outside chicken house is now, next to the duck pond, where they like to be. Yeah, so lots of cutting things down, lots of cutting things back, and we discovered all these beautiful spring bulbs, and they come back every year, and we're just so lucky with those. Snowdrops, crocuses, daffodils, and also bluebells, and they're just wonderful. They transform the woodland part into this beautiful, beautiful meadow. There we go, clearing more, lots of clearing, and putting in a second bed. This is our first ever garlic bed. We grew garlic as the first crop we really cared about. We thought we'd put it in the winter because that's when you're supposed to put in garlic. So it was spring at that point, but you know, that's all we could do. And we just love garlic so much, so we put it straight in the ground to see what happens. And that's also when I started to put some things into seedling trays to start on the windowsill, in the house. This is downstairs in what is now the larder, just every available space, including in our little lean-to grow house shed as well. They were there. I was very proud of them, and I was very excited about them. As you can see, it's largely in mushroom tubs and bits of everything. This is a courgette, and this is where we started doing our first wood chipping around the beds to try and keep past them. We didn't put cardboard down. We didn't know anything about no dig or really mulching or weed suppressant. So as you can imagine, none of it worked very well, but we had a go at it. That's more of the veg patch. You can see it taking shape down at the bottom. Strawberry surrounded by wood chipmunk was really beautiful, and it did well that year. It really did. The line you can see there, the blue line between two poles, is where the raspberries were. This is where the previous owners had put raspberries under the big tree, and we're never quite sure why they ended up there. There's some currants there as well. Years later, we moved them to a different part of the garden, to the fruit patch up further up where they get lots of sun. But they were there, and they never did very well because, you know, they were really old and they didn't get that much sun. But anyway, there they were. And then the seedlings started to sprout, and we got a little greenhouse. You can see the little greenhouse there. It was an aluminium one with plastic panels, and it did us really well that season. It did very nicely, but it didn't last. And I think you'll see a picture of that later on. But while we had it, it was amazing. We still have the staging of it, and we ended up reusing the plastic panels to fix our current shed, to put new windows in it. So most of that shed has been reused by now. And that's when we got our chickens as well in 2014. We got 3 chickens initially, and they lived outside in this run at first, and then we quickly built them an outside area that was grass, and then they could destroy it. This is the area that is now the fern-free food garden by the side of the lane. That's where we had the chickens for quite a while. And the things in the grow house continued to grow, and they were doing really well. Lots of happy plants and flowers and vegetables, all looking really nice. I think there's some broad beans there, maybe in the ground. This is our original asparagus attempt. That did not go well. So we put in loads of asparagus once. We accidentally ordered a lot more than we wanted. We were going to order like 30, and for some reason we ordered 80. So we had an awful lot. We gave some of them away and just thought, what on earth do we do with them? So we dug these big trenches to put them in. But because we didn't really know what we were doing, and life got in the way, and we got overwhelmed with it all, we didn't keep on top of them. So they just became grass again, and we never got a harvest off them. So somewhere out there, there's 30 dead asparagus plants or more buried. And yeah, we've tried asparagus in various places since, and we've now finally settled on a perennial bed where they're going to grow, and hopefully that will actually work. There's the chickens enjoying a bit of cabbage. We bought them cabbage in those days because we didn't have any we'd grown, but they were very happy birds. And this is a view of the patch with some strawberry beds, with potato beds, and with the asparagus patch thrown in as well. And you can see the raspberries are coming into leaf. That was a nice little patch down there. That was a good area. And then at the top of the garden by the hedge, there's this area with roses. And we weren't quite sure what that was for, or what that had been once upon a time. And there's some of them are still there. We're in the process of removing them, moving them to a different place, because that's not where we want them. And it had these 3 wooden posts that had clearly been some kind of trellis or fencing upon a time. But we thought we'd also like to try and grow some vegetables there at some point. So up there we put in, now I think that's broad beans. Is that broad beans? Yeah, growing up, or maybe peas. I can't quite zoom in. Anyway, we put some vegetables back there. But as you can see, we just sort of removed the grass from it. We didn't do anything to stop the grass coming in, so things didn't go that well. But we made a start. This is the rhododendron patch, and you can see some flowers next to it. The veg patch again. This would have been late April, I would think. Things are looking nice. But as you can see, the weeds are starting to creep in. We've planted out lots of things here. I think there's some onion. There's some more beans or peas or something like that. Bits and pieces. But the weeds are starting to creep in, and we didn't have enough time or energy or really knowledge and experience. So we didn't really know how to remove those weeds that were quite nasty ones, because we didn't put a mulch down. And I must say that switching to no dig has made all the difference in the world. Because now we do get some weeds, but they're largely surface weeds, so they're very easy to take out, whereas these ones they were hard work from what I remember. But we did have a go, and we weeded ever so often as the patch a bit neater, and we put in loads of things, and it was happy for a while. Some beetroot there, I think. So you can see the veg patch is growing, and that's 2 big ones, and things are looking well in the grow as well. That's lots of tomatoes in those rectangular boxes at the bottom. And things were really happy in the grow house that year. There's a courgette. I think these are plants that we bought in. I'm not sure if we grew these from seeds. I think these were maybe ones that we bought to grow on just to see what that was like. Potato patch is doing nicely, is coming along well as well. And then that would have been maybe some broccoli or cauliflower or cabbage or something. I suspect it's broccoli planted out. But again, in amongst the weeds, and we didn't really know how to weed or mulch, so yeah, didn't go that well. You can see this is the same view as earlier with the onions, and it's just getting more and more overgrown. But things are holding on. And again, the grow house was such a hit that year. We've got some sweet corn in there. We've got lots of tomatoes, lots of lettuce and everything else. And that was a really, really happy experience. We bought a grapevine that year. We put it in the shed. It didn't survive. And this is the rhododendron patch. And we started planting some things in there as well. And this is the bean patch up by the things. And we started doing this. We started sitting around and actually enjoying the space. And that was really important. There's some lettuce, having a lovely time outside. The courgette is still there, still in the pot, but clearly thriving because I can see a little courgette. And these are some panorama shots. So you can see what the space looked like, the whole space. It was a good summer. There was nice sunshine. And it was a nice garden and we enjoyed it, but we didn't spend as much time in it as we should. And we certainly didn't spend as much time with the vegetables, and we didn't do them in the right kind of way. But, you live and learn. And it was a really, really good start. And my memories of that year, which are a bit fuzzy, are largely that the grow house did really well. We got lots of lovely food from that. Now, this is the chicken area at the top. After a while, we built them an extended run that we fenced with this, I think it was all trampoline netting and things like that. So it was a run that they had lots of space. There's 3 chickens at the time in what is now the free food garden. But we couldn't get in because we didn't build a walk-in one, we built this low one. And we never really got to spend that much time with them up close. And it wasn't until we moved into the big garden, which you'll see later on, that was quite a while later, that we had a tall walk-in thing for the chickens. And then eventually the chickens became free range and sat on us all the time. But yeah, that was the first chicken palace. And it did really well. And we never had any problems with foxes getting in or anything like that. Oh, look at that, that's the courgette, and it's getting bigger. And there we harvested one. That was our first courgette. And we're very proud of it. I'm very happy. And then we met Archie, the puppy. This is the summer that year for Seamus's 40th. We got a puppy. And this is when we met him. And at the same time, we also got George the rabbit. George the rabbit came from Seamus's sister down south. And we brought him up in the car on one of the many stops on the journey. Well, we had him on a little leash and, he got to hop around a bit. And yeah, that's George. And then we brought Archie home, and Archie became a fixture in any and all garden things. He's really tiny, such a small dog. And then I have no other garden picks from that year, really. There's just sort of the odd thing of harvest. Because I think we just got carried away with work and with Archie, and that just took over everything. Being academics, our year starts in August, and we just got massively busy. But I remember good harvests from that year, but I clearly didn't take pictures of them. We do have the start of the apple season, and that's just a small hint of what was to come. There's some tomatoes there. And a garlic harvest. It's a really small onion and garlic harvest by our standards now, but it was so welcome and it was so good and it made us so happy. And look, I braided them and I'm very happy with that. And we also started harvesting some sweet peas, some flowers, which we've grown every year since because they're wonderful. And we also grew some sunflowers, and they made such a difference to the space. But lots of pictures of the pets being outside, being happy. This is the rabbit enclosure. When we got George, we quickly got him some companions as well, lady rabbits, and we thought they needed a bigger enclosure. So this is the rabbit palace that we've built them. So it's sort of 2 rabbit houses connected with a run, and that was their space. And one of them is still outside now. It's a sort of daytime chicken house when they're allowed to roam. But the smaller one is in the chicken enclosure, and it's part of where they sleep at night, and it's part of what the ducks sleep under and so on. So we've always reused things. So anyway, there's George waiting for his ladies, I think, just on his own for a little while. And then it's on to winter. So this is the end of 2014. It snowed a bit, and you can see what the space is like. And then this happened. There was a storm and there was snow. And the grow house just twisted and collapsed, and it was hideous. And we were so upset by this and so disheartened, and we didn't know what to do. And we eventually just took the whole thing down and just put it in a pile of junk, thinking we'll do something with it one day. And we have reused quite a lot of the bits over the time, but it made us think long and hard about what kind of structure we're going to put in and whether we're going to replace it with a greenhouse or a polytunnel. In the end, we went for polytunnels, that you can see when we get the first ones of them, because I think they just did better for us with the wind. So anyway, that was a sad, sad day. But there was still some harvesting to be done. There's a nice cabbage there. And the chickens are really happy. They're eating some cabbage as well. And then it's on to 2015. 2015 was a really busy year. It was massively busy at work. We did lots of public events as well as our normal, teaching, writing stuff. We went to lots of places. We were really busy. We didn't have that much time to spend in the garden, but we still did stuff. Again, this is a familiar story from early on. We were busy. We did lots of stuff. We didn't really know what we're doing because we didn't really have the time to learn about it properly. We had a lot of fun. So there's not that many garden pictures compared to pictures of other things, largely pictures of people and books and us going places. But yeah, so garden-wise, it was a bit of a hit and miss, but we still grew lots of stuff and we built on what we'd done the year before. So we start the year with a snow picture, things looking a bit bare. The trampoline is where the rhododendron was. And we bought lots of bedding because we'd had enough of the rhododendron patch, and we made it into little flower oasis. It was really pretty for a while. It did really well. The daffodils were amazing that year. They did really, really well. They were just everywhere in clumps. And we all enjoyed it, including Archie, excuse me, who's really, really filthy here, as you can see him. And the same as the previous year, lots of cutting back early in the spring, lots of tidying things up. And oh my goodness, this is the veg patch. Can you see it? The veg patch from the previous year with the line by the raspberries. And it's entirely overgrown because someone didn't keep on top of it at all. So it's as though the veg patch doesn't exist. That was such a disheartening thing. And we were starting from scratch again. And it drove us mad. Oh my goodness, I'm just remembering that. That was hard. Really, really hard. I think it made us think about the location of that differently as well. That's the rabbit house, and that's Archie being really, really happy. Just lots of pictures of, us enjoying the garden with the cats and things. And here's an overview of what it looked like at that time. You can see the fallen down greenhouse in the sort of middle left there as well. And you can see that the rabbits at that point had moved to sort of the middle right. They're hidden behind a bush, but they're roughly under the big tree in the middle there, tucked away. So they moved from the left-hand side by the wall to the middle. And, things were nice. We kept on top of mowing. Some of it we let go a bit wilder because we wanted to encourage wildlife as well. And we didn't want a neat garden. And the flower patch continued to thrive. And this is the new rabbit home where that moved. And George is really happy. And there's his companion, one of them. We had a range of rabbits over the years. So these are two of his companions hopping around, exploring themselves with a little outside run there. And then we got Daisy. Daisy the kitten. Daisy was so tiny. So that was us up to 3 indoor pets, 2 cats, Penny and Daisy, and Archie the dog, and then the rabbits outside. And everyone got on well together, and we spent a lot of time enjoying the gardening, sitting around with the pets, having a good time. We started putting in a lavender path, which, surprise, surprise, didn't work because, the grass just took back everything because we didn't mulch and we didn't plant it properly. But we had fun putting it in, and it was nice for a little while. And the strawberry bed is still the same. That is still thriving. And Penny started going up the trees a bit more, which was really nice. And there were flowers popping up too. And we started to think more seriously about landscaping, and we found this local supply of wood chips. We had to go and pick it up. We started making a path. You can see it with cardboard here. We started making a wood chip path, and that was essentially the beginning of the main path down the garden we have now. And we put the lavenders in, and it would have been really nice if we'd done it well, and I still sometimes think we should do it. And we also planted things again. We planted some cabbages. Some of the things were grown from seeds, some of them were bought in. But, we had a go at things. And we decided to use the base of the greenhouse that had fallen down as a raised bed. We put in loads of things, and that was a good year. Things did okay in it. It could have had better soil. and it could have been taller, but it was fine. And this is the strawberry patch, which I decided I would try and net to stop things eating it. And I think I was also thinking that netting would somehow help with weeding, which, yeah, no. Anyway, here's a view of the garden. Happy space. This is almost the view I have right now. I'm sitting in the other room, but it's not far off from that. And there's the garden, looking slightly more wild, slightly more overgrown, but in a good way to encourage the wildlife. And that's really good. And we had a good plum harvest that year. We're so fond of plums. And as you can see, Seamus is so happy. Plums and dam's not green gauges. Anyway, they did well. Happy, happy plums. And apples too. These the red apples are from the little apple tree that you saw us put in 2013. And it's always the earliest by far. And it's a happy apple tree, and we love that one. It's a nice tree. And then we've got the view from the window again, starting to look a bit autumnal, but nice and cheerful. But still predominantly, grass and shrubs and trees, and not really food-based. That's the end of 2015. And we were starting to think about how to grow more food. And as you can see from the absence of harvest pigs, we really didn't do very well that year. We were really busy. We didn't sow things. We didn't look after the garden the way it needed it. We really didn't focus on the vegetables. And that was all about to change. So 2016 was another really busy year at work. Lots of fun things, lots of public things, lots of outings to libraries, conferences. We had a wonderful time, and we enjoyed the garden, and we did grow some more as well. But it was also the year when I started to get unwell, and I can pinpoint it almost exactly. It was the first day back after the summer holidays, so this would have been mid-August, and I got this very intense migraine at work, and ended up passing out on a friend's floor waiting to be picked up by Seamus. And that was the start of a pretty dark time, of a year that continued to be busy, but my health just increasingly plummeted, and I was getting more and more of these migraine episodes, what we thought of as migraine, what we're not sure are migraines now. And in the end, it ended up with being really out of it all the time, having no energy, just constantly just sort of holding on, and having bad migraines 2-3 times a week. It was sort of this continuous thing, which continued into about May 2017. So I'll talk a bit more about how that went. But 2016, the first half was okay but busy, and the second half was busy and just health stuff increasingly creepy and scary, and just meant I really wasn't doing that well. And we spent a lot of our time and energy trying to figure out what it was and what we could do about it. 2016. We start with a bit of snow, and the garden looks pretty much like it did the previous year. You can see that the rabbit hutch has moved a bit. It's now down the middle, pretty much where it still is, except it doesn't have rabbits in it now. It's the outside chicken house, but that's where it is. And you can see not much else has changed. There's no raised beds or anything like that. It's also the time when the chickens started escaping a lot, this one in particular. And we started to think about in making the enclosure stronger and maybe moving them to a different enclosure, the other half of the garden. But we spend a lot of time shooing the chickens back in and going, what do we do about that? And then Nigel arrived. This is Nigel, and he's so handsome, such a handsome boy. So settled in well, and that's us now with 3 cats, a dog, rabbits and chickens. And this is what the garden looked like at that point. So we're back to a nature garden, a more overgrown garden. You can see the path is just about still visible, the wood chip path, and that's really the beginning of the structural stuff. That's never gone away. And the chickens are still behind this hedge, which is now no more. This is now where the free food garden is. And it is, in fact, those windows that you can see in that potting shed that we fixed with the greenhouse that had fallen down. And, as the weather increased, so did our gardening appetite, and we started doing things from seed again. And that's something we've done every year since, and it's just gotten bigger and better. But there things are holding on. The grapevine is still alive. And we never got any grapes on it, but we enjoyed growing it for a while. And we started putting things by the back door, which is the front door in practice. It's the door we use all the time. We started putting some plants there, And eventually we turned that into a full bed as well. But there's plants, and we're putting some things on the windowsill, and things are quite cheerful. There's Archie and one of the rabbits enjoying themselves out there together. And we started building raised beds. I think this is quite a momentous photograph because it's the first raised beds we had. We made little beds like that, and they were from old IKEA bookcases, Billy bookcases. And we had that wood because we built built-in bookcases in the house. So we had lots of spare old bookcases, like this one here, in fact. And some of them we took out the garden. And they did really well for a while. That first year that we had them and we filled them with compost, they did really well. And then we didn't realise you had to top them up and feed them. So the year after was a bit more rubbish. But for some reason, we thought it'd be a really good idea to have nice little beds that are about 1 metre by 1 metre, rather than bigger beds, so that you have more growing space and less path space. But they did well, and they are the basis of what is now our long raised beds at the top of the garden. So this is really when it started, when we started growing in that part of the garden, and we started growing in earnest. Growing in that way was made quite a momentous difference to our effort. This is sort of the beginning of the structure that we've had ever since. But you can see that because we didn't know any better, we put plastic bags with holes in under the path, which of course we've all had to remove. That was a terrible, terrible idea. Cardboard was much better, but it was what we had, and we thought it was better that than no weed suppressing thing. So there we go. You can see the beginning of the fruit patch as well. These are the currant bushes, I think, and they're pretty much in the space where they're at the moment. There's just an awful lot more raspberries now. And we are, in fact, going to move these out of the raspberry patch into a different part of the garden, more into the middle part where the rabbit house was for a while. But, you know, we enjoyed them, and Penny the cat enjoyed lying there. And the chickens have enjoyed scrabbling there as well over the years. And that's the plants in the shed doing well. We got a little thermometer, which was a welcome thing as well. Allowed us to keep an eye on things. And just made more progress with the beds and everything else. Grapevine still doing okay, still holding on. And this is what the garden looked like. At the bottom left, you can see the corner of that greenhouse that had fallen over. That's now a raised bed. And in the middle, beyond the table, where you can see colourful compost bags, that's roughly where those veg beds are that we put in. And that's probably a space you recognise if you've seen some of our other videos as well. We started clearing bits by the wall as well, and just having words with that. And we did a lot of that. We did a lot of sitting around, enjoying ourselves, being with the pets. Penny loves having her selfie taken. We take one every year. It's usually a version of this. And yeah, we sat around a lot. We enjoyed what was there, and yeah, tried to make the most of it and try to tame some of these corners, some of these unkempt edges a bit, and just try to do a little bit more with the space. This is where the rhubarb is now, in that corner there. This is shame as putting in more fruit bushes, I think. Yeah, these are raspberry canes that we got from elsewhere in the garden. We started putting this. This was the beginning of our proper raspberry patch. This is the beginning of our fruit patch. This is still where it is. Oh, such a happy memory putting the fruit patch in. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And then we built the rabbits an outdoor enclosure. We put this very heavily fenced with stones enclosure out there, and they still escaped. They dug out, and we spent quite a bit of time chasing them around the garden to herd them back in and up and down the lane and out of the neighbours' backyards and things like that. It was always one of them who'd get out in particular. George was never keen on escaping, but the girls were. Anyway, the rabbits were very happy, and they enjoyed that enclosure quite a lot. And there were a lot of tree stumps in there after a while. It was a nice space for everyone. And Nigel the cat would go in there and sleep with them, and no one seemed to mind that. And there we are. That's the garden looking nice. This would have been late April, I would think. And you can see the path is still going strong. There's a veg bed bottom left where the greenhouse used to be. And things are starting to take shape. And you can see the 2 veg beds are full now at the front, the raised beds. There's one next to it waiting to be filled. And then the fruit patch behind it with wood chips, that's looking really good as well. So we sort of did a version of no dig by putting the cardboard down, but we just never really followed through with it. And because my health just plummeted, we didn't really then have the wherewithal to keep on top of it and deal with it properly. But yeah, happy fruit bushes, and they continue to be happy. They're such a joy. And those veg beds did really well that year. You can see we have lots of different things, just tiny amounts, not to feed us, just to make a start. And it was a very happy time. We netted them, and it did really well. We got lots of food from this, and that was a formative experience of thinking, hang on, maybe we could grow more of this stuff ourselves. The pets were an integral part of the garden. They still are. You can see the cats and the rabbits and everyone else enjoying themselves as well. And this is really the time when we started to build our beds in a more no-dig way. I don't think we'd come across no-dig at that point, but we'd been reading up on permaculture stuff. And that's when we started filling our beds with straw, with spent animal bedding at the bottom, and then topping them up with compost. And that did really well for that year. But we didn't realize we'd have to keep topping them up every year. So that's why the next year things didn't go very well. And it's also when we started tackling some more infrastructure stuff in the garden. We had this giant hedge down the middle of the garden in a really pointless place. It separates the woodland from the rest of the garden. We don't really like it there at all. So over the years, we've gradually done some work, and this is the beginning of us tackling that and opening that whole area out a bit more with a view to getting the chickens in there as well. And we planted our plum tree. This is the second tree that we bought for our orchard. The big plums at the bottom of the garden is really huge. We can't really harvest it, and it's too overgrown. So we put one in, and it was a very momentous occasion. It's not done very well yet, but I have high hopes for it. And then we started putting in more raised beds as well. The one you see there is a version of this one here. It was a spare one. So again, we put cardboard down and filled it in the same way. And the chickens had their first taste of freedom. They're still by the shed where the free food garden is now, but we then let them out a little bit under supervision from us and the cat just to see what it was like. And this is what the garden looked like at the time. It might still seem overgrown and unkempt to you, but to me, looking at this picture here, I can see our infrastructure coming into place, and I can see exactly how things morphed from there into where we are now. And it's actually starting to take shape in quite a nice way. We also started to accumulate a lot of this crofting crap. Things that we save because we're going to reuse them at some point, things that are just waiting for their turn. Things like the bits of the greenhouse that had fallen down. And this is a rare picture of all three of the cats in together. So you've got Penny on the left, Daisy in the middle, and then Nigel sitting proudly on top of it. All three of them. We had 3 cats at that point, 1 dog, and the rabbits and the chickens. And then 2 more cats arrived. They're rescues from a friend. This is Grabthar, and this is Zoron, as they came to be known. And their arrival really coincided with my health taking a nosedive. So I spent a lot of time with them, managed to get to the beach now and then with Archie, but a lot of the pictures that I have from that period are pets. Seamus bringing apples ever so often. That was the year when our apple harvest started to be a bit more serious, and we started to harvest them slightly better as well. And then Lulu arrived. Lulu is a rescue as well, and she just changed our lives. She was cheerful and silly and just wants to snuzzle all day. And in a period when I also wanted to snuzzle a lot and lie down and have a companion, she was just the thing we needed at that time. So this is her first visit to us before she even moved in. But after that, again, most of the pictures from the rest of the year are the pets, or me and one of the pets. We did a lot of that. And that's the end of 2016. So 2017 was a tricky year. My health wasn't good. I was at work till mid-May, really busy, trying to hold it together, increasingly bad migraines and sleeping all the time when I wasn't at work. And it was hideous. So we wanted to garden, and we really tried, and we really put a lot of effort in, and things didn't really pay off again. We weren't really in the right frame of mind for it, but we also wanted to try, and it was a nice escape from the rest of it. And I was signed off in May 2017 from work. I never went back. I was never well enough to actually go back. And I had this period of, I suppose, the second half of 2017 where I was at home, and I still had a bit of energy to poof around and do stuff, but it was also this period of great uncertainty, of really worrying about my health, of really not knowing how things were going to be, and of thinking about whether gardening might be something I might be able to do, and if growing food was maybe a thing I could devote my time and energy in. But I got gradually worse and worse that year. 2018 was a bad year too, and I was mostly bedbound for a lot of that period. I was sleeping a lot, had a lot of really nasty symptoms, wasn't able to get out much. So the snippets that you see are really snippets of moments when I was with it. And there are a lot of moments when I wasn't. So the first half of 2017, I think, we're still doing quite well, and then things just sort of fall apart. So we'll see how 2017 is in garden pictures. So the first picture here is of more raised beds. We started building another one because we liked how things had gone the year before, and we wanted to have more of that. And we built a square one from one of those IKEA, I think they're called calyx now, one of the square things, essentially cardboard inside, and that it was going to rot away really quickly. But, we gave it a go, and we built it in the same cardboard, permaculture-y, no-dig kind of way. And we also started getting some tyres from the garage in the village to line our paths, and that made a big difference. And we got a little plastic grow house just to tide us over to see how that would do. It flew away in a storm, but while we had it, it was fine just to get the seeds started. It's so dark and so cold here for so long that you really need somewhere other than a windowsill to do that. So we build a path, and this is still essentially the beginning of the path network that we have now. Where that little grow house is where the middle polytunnel is now, the small one, and that's really nice. You can see it there, and that's exactly the view I have right now, looking at the garden as I'm talking to you. There's a little growth there, and you can see that gradually more of the garden is becoming food-based and food-related, and that makes me really happy looking back at that. We expanded the fruit patch. You can see on the sort of right-hand side, the background, that's the fruit patch we had before, and we started putting more fruit in. And I think that's the year when we bought quite a lot of bare root raspberry plants who've now taken over the space in a very happy way, and they're everywhere. And it was starting to look more like the kind of vegetable garden that we had in mind. We put some garlic in. Garlic did all right that year, and we started experimenting with these little woven fences. And they were nice as well. And flowers continued to do well. This is looking into the orchard, and you can see the little apple tree straight ahead, and then to the left you can see the little plum tree as well that we put in. And yeah, things were happy. It was a pretty spring. We got a bench, which we still have now, and it meant we could sit in the orchard and enjoy ourselves. And at that point we built up beginnings of our collection of gardening and permaculture and grow your own books, and there's quite a few good things there. Just looking at that, that's not a bad spread at all. I still use quite a lot of those on a pretty regular basis. And then the momentous day arrived when we got our first polytunnel. This is the oldest tunnel we have. We put the plastic on the ground, weighed it down with tyres, and that's what we've done with all of them since, and that's worked really well. And it's between the fallen over greenhouse and the fruit patch, and this is still where it is. This is our tomato tunnel, and it does very well every year. And you can see me on the left. I'm already sitting down. I'm not standing around. But this is the tunnel. This is what it was like when it was new. This one is 3 by 4 meters, and it's a really nice size. So we had these 2 grow houses at that point, and things were starting to shape up quite nicely. And we also started to get into things like that, into growing on vegetables from the supermarket, into thinking about what else we could reuse and how we could stop buying things, essentially. And I did a lot of this, sitting around the garden, reading, looking at the veg space and feeling really pleased with it. This is the inside of the tunnel. We built raised beds in the usual way, and we filled some of it with staging so we could grow our seeds in there as well. And this is the view from the window. It's so nice to look at that. We filled the tyres along the path with, it was a lot of strawberries and some rhubarb and some cabbage. And it was a lovely, lovely time early on. This is the little orchard. You can see the apple tree blossoming on the right and the plum tree blossoming in the middle. There's quite a few more trees now, all small trees. We're looking to keep small. And the beds outside were doing well. Also, we thought, because we didn't realise that you'd have to top them up to keep them doing well. So we put in lots of plants, but they did less well than they should have done, and certainly less well than the year before. And we didn't know why, and it only occurred to us later on that we should have topped them up with compost and manure to feed the soil, and you can't just keep planting into the same soil hoping it'll be fine. Lots of happy little beds, and it was starting to look more like what we had in mind. Some lovely peas there, I think, some broad beans. The strawberry patch by the wall, which is also where it's now. The fruit patch got its border, and it's roughly the size that it is now in front of the grow house, and things are really starting to be recognisable. The grow house was looking good, lots of plants in it, things in the ground were doing quite well. Some of them were still things we bought, and you can see the labels there. I think we bought in chilies and peppers and maybe a pumpkin or something like that. But, you know, it's a sort of, it's an entry-level way of growing, isn't it? Buying that and seeing what it does. And yeah, it certainly did the trick for us. And the dogs enjoyed themselves, ran around a lot like mad things. Rhubarb continued to grow. All the plants continued to grow. Strawberries were doing well. And I have a lot of photos of plants doing well, and that tells me that I'm starting to get more interested in it. I'm starting to take more pride in it, and to think of this as something that I really want to do more of and spend more time doing. And I started talking to people about vegetable growing and starting to just be more excited about it all. And that was really the time when we started to think of it as a way of life, as how we live, rather than just as something we might like to do at some point. We started to get more serious about it all as well. And that's really what these pictures are all about, that I wanted to document it more, and I wanted to, have a record of what we're doing. I was proud of what we're doing. And it's a really nice thing to look back on that and see what was happening and see how things were at the time. And things look good. Things were starting to look like the kind of vegetable garden that we had in mind, with beds dotted about and some structures and fruit and sort of a higgledy-piggledy mismatch of things, like a cottage garden of vegetables. And that's a very happy thing to look at. And we started to enjoy a harvest as well. We had a lot of spinach that year. That was really nice. And there's something that really made a difference to how we lived our life, all of us, the humans and the pets as well. And again, started recording more of it, started to take more pictures of flowers and of the strawberries and of all the harvests that we're having. The broad beans were amazing that year. I think that's probably the best broad bean year we've ever had. I don't really know what it was, but they just did really well. Timings worked out, weather was good, and we got loads of foods, lots of other food as well, lots of fruit, raspberries, gooseberries, you can see here, and things were doing really well in the tunnel as well. Look at that, look how happy that is. And the rabbits enjoyed themselves. They kept enjoying the outdoor enclosure, and we got lots and lots of harvests. That's a good chunk of greens and onion and things there as well. But increasingly, I did more of this. I sat around with the pets outside or inside, and that really became where I spend a lot of my time. Just me sitting around with the pets, getting really frustrated, not being able to do much physically and not being able to think straight, being exhausted and dizzy all the time. And it was really hard, particularly having all that time on my hands of not being at work for the first time ever, but not being able to do anything with it, not being able to use it, and only rarely being able to get up and sit around like that. Most of the time I was in bed, taking pictures like this from the window and just looking at it while Seamus harvested and fed me and did stuff. And occasionally I'd get out, he'd call me, I was able to harvest this courgette, and I was able to harvest that tiny bit of broccoli, and I was able to harvest the garlic. But I remember those as very, very special occasions, because they're one of the few occasions that intersect the sea of just being in bed with nothing really happening. So I made it out ever so often, looking at things, and things continued to grow because we'd set them up well. And there was lots of veg and it was looking really nicely, but I was so frustrated with not really having the time or energy or wherewithal to really look after it and do stuff. So we were lucky to benefit from our earlier care and energy and being able to put things in, and had good harvests that year. But it sort of went away again, and I spent a lot of that year just sitting around staring at things, wishing I could do more and wishing I could do things differently, and just thinking about how to replicate this in future and how to do more of it, and how to basically started planning for the garden more effectively. We grew wonderful sunflowers that year. It's the one year we got it right, and got lovely potatoes. We're very happy with all our harvests, as you can see. And this year, me with the garlic is one of the occasions I remember from that year. You can see I'm wearing pajamas. I'm really out of it. I'm really not doing very well at all. But I managed to get out and sit there and clean the garlic. I think Seamus maybe harvested it and passed it to me, and I just pulled the leaves off. And that was literally pretty much all I could do at that point. And yeah, it's sad to think of that. But we didn't let that stop us. We thought the first tunnel was doing so well. We're getting such good harvests on it. We'd really like to get a second one. So we put this little one in where the temporary grow house had been that you could see earlier. And it was 2 by 3 meters, and it's never done as well. It's always been a bit of an unloved one, and I'm really not sure why. And this year we're gonna make better use of it, and we see what happens with it. But we kind of built the same sort of beds in it, like this, bit of space in the middle, and we're enjoying what it was doing. But I wasn't well enough to really do anything at that point, or look after it, or really care for it very much. But we still got harvests that year. We got the odd thing here and there. We got a giant courgette thing. We got some nice squashes. We got some asparagus coming up that we planted in one of the raised beds last year, so we're able to harvest a bit here and there. And it was really nice, and it was starting to look and feel like the sort of overgrown, joyful veg garden that we had in mind, really, with flowers and veg interspersed with things just in abundance and joy. You can see the fruit patch there, overgrown with weeds, but the fruit was still really happy, and the weed problem was really only solved by letting the chickens and ducks in there. But look at that first tunnel. Look at how much stuff there is in there. Everything's so happy. Butternuts. We've never managed to use the tunnel that well since, so it's one of the things I'm really wanting to work on this year, to use our tunnels better in the summer. It was a really good year, really good weather, and we ended up harvesting a lot of it. But my memory of that year is really fuzzy, so I don't remember most of this. I know it happened because I have pictures of it, but I barely remember any of this. Seamus will remember it better, but for me, yeah, not that much. This is the start of the herb bed, I think. There's pumpkins everywhere and squashes and things like that, and just things interspersed. Some things gone to seed, some things ready to be harvested. And it was the pictures make it feel like there's this joyful time of just cottage abundance. And this is very much not what my memories of that time are. But clearly there was a lot of that going on as well. A lot of blueberries. This was our best blueberry year. They did really well that year. The orchard was coming together nicely. You can see the 2 small fruit trees getting bigger. There's the little apple tree starting to ripen. Lots of brambles that year. That was the year the borage really took hold everywhere, and that's a lovely thing to have around. We're very fond of that. And things were starting to look good in the second little grow house as well. And we enjoyed lots of sunflowers and lots of other flowers as well. Everyone joined in. There's lots of pictures of Archie and Lulu just running around the garden. Lots of squashes and fruit and flowers and just happy abundance. But I don't really remember that happening. Started filling the big square bed as well. There's a lot of rocket in there, I think, and it sort of became a bit of a salad and herb bed in the end. You can see the dogs and cats rootling around everywhere. Penny has always been a great garden helper. She's always had a great time. Rabbits are still enjoying themselves as well. Nigel is still a good guardian. He loved the blueberry patch. He would sleep there all the time. And there's still some little plants in the grow house as well, just doing more and more. And we started our apple harvest. And that's the first year that I have pictures of cider making. So I'm not sure if it is the first year that we actually made cider, but it's the year where I started to have lots and lots of apple pictures. They were everywhere. We stored them in drawers, we stored them in cabinets, and lots of homemade jam there as well. You can see we started making jam that year. We stored them just about everywhere. The whole house was full of apples and smelled like apples for a while. In all the kitchen cabinets, on all the surfaces, and in that collage that I'm very, very fond of. There's just apples everywhere. And then it started to snow. And I love these pictures because the garden looks so different. The garden finally looks like what I had in mind. It's got some of the infrastructure in. It's starting to look like a garden where stuff happens, not just a garden where there's lawn and shrubs, but a garden that is productive, a garden that feeds you, a garden that is home to animals. And yeah, I remember looking out of the snow from the window. I wasn't really able to move much at all, and just being so happy at the side and so happy at how much we'd managed to do despite me not really joining in for a lot of it. And the last picture from that year is one of the cider. And this is the first picture of the cider that I have, so maybe it is the first cider year. I don't quite remember. And then we're on to 2018. 2018 was a year that I remember as largely being stuck in bed. Largely not doing very well at all. Not being able to get up much, not being able to go for walks, not being able to be outside, not being able to be upright very much at all, just being stuck in bed and being able to go outside ever so often and sit in a chair, and felt like a massive luxury. And being really sad about the garden and really not being able to keep up with it and not being able to feed us in the way we had before. And it was a difficult time. But it was the time that I discovered Instagram, not the garden community, but other ones. And I got into the habit of sort of documenting my everyday life a bit more. And I'm glad I started that. But most of it wasn't obviously outside or garden because, I wasn't there. And it wasn't really until a year later, early 2019, that I started to be able to get a bit more energy back, be able to move a bit more, and be able to start reading things and taking in information as well, and start planning our garden. That's when we came across No Dig and thought, this is where it's going. So anyway, let's see how 2018 went. Quite a bit of snow. Things are covered in snow. And you can see in the snow picture there, this is the small grow house. Next to it is a little wide square bed. And that is where the triangular bed is now. So we eventually turned that area into a no-dig bed. And because in no-dig you can have things any shape, we were able to fill that whole area with food as well. This is more of the fruit patch and the other veg beds. And this is the view from the window. Again, this is how I saw the garden for most of that year. Sometimes I was able to do this, sit outside with a pet, usually wearing sunglasses and a hoodie because I was very sensitive to light. So while sitting in the sun was something that was really nice and felt really good, it was also a really difficult thing and something I could only do in very small amounts, ever so often, quite rarely. But we started putting some things in. I didn't have the energy to pre-sow anything that year, I don't think, not from what I can remember. So we just shoved some seeds in the ground and hoped for the best. Didn't feed the beds, so, it didn't do very well. And I wasn't able to keep on top of it. But we tried, and we put some things in the polytunnel, I think this is. And I think I took these pictures to remind myself of what I'd done and literally to be able to remember by the time I got in the house to write it down, because my memory was just really, really terrible at that point as well. But we celebrated the rhubarb coming back out like we do every year. And the rabbits were still enjoying themselves, and I sat with them when I could. And we still got our usual one spring cabbage. This was last year. I think that's a Brussels sprout, actually. But I suspect we ate it as a cabbage. And we put some plants indoors, so I could see some plants of stuff. they're still happy. Though that one has grown a lot of babies now and has turned into this jungle thing. But that is that year's cabbage, and it was harvesting that was one of those very special moments of remembering that the garden might feed us, and that even when I felt like things were really terrible, there was some food there and I'd grown that, and that was an important step. But really, on my good days, I was sometimes able to sit outside like that. That's a very unusual day because I was not wearing a hoodie and I was not wearing sunglasses. So it must have been a really, really good day. And that's what the garden started to look like. Put in some garlic and some onion in the usual way. Replanted found some onions that had overwintered that we clearly missed the year before. And started to bring in some flowers as well. Seamus would bring me flowers from the garden all the time to cheer me up. Something I was very grateful for. And then snow arrived again. More and more snow. And again, I was mostly able to see from the window. I think this is maybe one of Seamus's pictures of the two cats. It was a cold winter everywhere. And we just got tons and tons of snow. But there's also this. This is the first picture I found of seeds and of a seed container. So it's clearly when I started thinking about that a bit more, and I had some seeds in storage, and looking back at that, this feels like quite a momentous picture as well. Just seeing that, and yeah, it makes me quite happy. Anyway, this is the garden in the snow as it looked. And oh no, look at that, I must have sown some things. Oh, and I think we started buying things from Lidl. We started getting Lidl seeds. So I'm just looking at it and closely. And clearly I was well enough to sow some things ever so often, but I don't think it happened very often. It's all reused plant trays. I think that the bedding plants had come in the day before. And I just try to sow various things. But again, another picture from the window, because most days this is how I would see the garden. But I would keep an eye on my little plants. Some of them coming up, very leggy seedlings there, I must have sowed them too early. And again, another window picture, because yep, that's how the garden looked that year. But look at those uplands. Oh, we got this little tomato grow house, so we could start the seeds in the bay window upstairs. This is, I think, where I am now, in that room upstairs, in what was then the bedroom. No, it's a spare room upstairs. And yeah, we got that thing, and that's become useful staging later on, but it's a good way of getting warmth and light in there and stopping the cats from jumping in and eating all the vegetables and upsetting all the seedlings as well. And I clearly started to be more interested in vegetables because I took more photos of them, and I took more progress photos of my plantlets getting on. There's some strawberry plants and a rare picture of the bulbs outside. I must have managed to get outside and look at them all happy. And I think we had them on those trays and turned them around once a day, once every other day, whenever we could manage. And yeah, there's quite a lot of these kind of pictures coming up. Started planting things out in the polytunnel, clearly. And all of us, including the cat, enjoy just sitting around, not doing very much at all. Oh, and this is a really momentous day, because this is when the chickens moved from their enclosure by the shed into the main garden, into their giant chicken palace where they are at the moment. And this is the first time that we really managed to pick up the girls, to hold them, because I had to carry them across the street to get them there. And that was such a life-giving moment, hugging a chicken. And this is the first of many, 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 many pictures of me hugging chickens. That makes me very happy looking at that. Oh, look, there's another one. Carrying her down the garden. I don't think she was very happy with that. But this is their big enclosure. This is what they're in now. This is the chicken palace. There were 3 of them then, and now there's 15 and 5 ducks. So our flock has grown significantly. We had to drag their housey down because it was just too heavy to lift. And there they are in their enclosure. They weren't free range yet at that point. They were in the enclosure. But it was a very happy time with that. And it meant that I was able to sit in there with them. We put some chairs in there, and I was able to sit there and spend time with the chickens and see the rabbits as well, and just be with the birds up close. And that was a very happy thing. It was something I could do sitting down And it was something that kept me going and entertained me and a nice thing to do. But again, lots of pictures like this from the window, because that's pretty much most of what we did. Things are doing okay in the tyres. I think that maybe when we moved some of the rhubarb to a different spot. And there's some asparagus coming through as well. I have a lot of these little asparagus pictures. I must have been very pleased with the asparagus that year. And a lot of pictures of me holding pets. That's a happy thing. That's in the grow house. Things are doing okay. And that's in some of the outside bed. This is, I reckon that's garlic. And then there's some really pretty broad beans in a really happy shape. I don't know how well that worked, but I clearly made an effort at some point. And again, sat in the chicken enclosure quite a lot. More asparagus, there it is coming through. And more. I sat around a lot. This was a very happy day where I sat outside and ate ice cream with the chickens and watched Penny walk along the top of the enclosure. And we just sat down a lot. And eventually the chickens started to sit on us, and that's a very happy memory as well. And we got these second-hand sun loungers so I could lie down outside with a blanket, because I was always cold, and that made a big difference to being able to enjoy the space. And this is a rare picture of me gardening that year. I'm sitting down, I'm literally holding on to the bed, but I put in some herbs, and it was a very happy thing. It was a different day, but doing pretty much the same thing, harvesting the asparagus and going back to bed to eat it. And there we are, chickens sitting on us, and we have many, many of those pictures to come, sitting around with the birds, all the cats, enjoying the space, enjoying the animals, but not really able to do that much, just kind of being out there, being with them, sitting around, lying around, watching the plants grow, but not really being able to do that much for them myself. So Seamus did the vast majority of the gardening that year. But things continue to do all right. I have a range of photos here of progress in the polytunnel, but you can see it's nowhere like it was the year before. It's not abundant. Things are all right, but it's not nearly as happy as it was. And I think it's because we didn't top up the beds at all. We didn't change that. Yeah, there's lots of pictures of some veg happening, and some veg doing all right. But it's a really, really disappointing year compared to previous years. Nothing did quite as well. Lots of slugs and snails. And it was because we didn't feed the beds, because we didn't really know about it. And because it was really only Seamus doing stuff, and, between caring for me and working, that filled his days. And yeah, it's a sort of bittersweet feeling looking at these things, because we did do stuff, we did expand things, and we did grow stuff, but because of my health it really didn't continue the trajectory of self-sufficiency that we were on. But I think then we enjoyed every moment as it came, and looking back I think I'm enjoying seeing every bit of spinach that we managed to grow despite circumstances and despite life being really quite difficult. Oh, there's asparagus again. That really is my favourite. It really is everywhere. And we had some good success with broad beans and with broccoli and things like that. We spent a lot of time sitting in the chicken enclosure, looking at the birds, looking at the cats, and just being out there. Well, I say a lot of time. I mean, whenever I could. But my memory of spending time in the garden that year, I have been saying, it's sitting around with the pets, looking at the progress of things ever so often, being brought flowers by Seamus when they're in season, and just looking at it from the window. Well, there were harvests. There's a very happy sailor with a big load of salad, and I'm sitting there enjoying some chicken time, and that's nice too. That was a good year sitting in the chicken coop. For sitting in the chicken coop, I mean, it was a good year for sitting in the chicken coop, enjoying the chickens. A good year for fruit, gooseberries and so on, and just enjoying the abundance of, not the vegetables, what was there. And this is a highlight of the year, because I managed to lift Archie. I picked him up and held him, and he wasn't very sure about it, but I did it, and it was a hilarious thing, and it made me very happy that I was able to do that. And then, I slept for several days, but it was nice to be able to do that. And I got so much more confident with the chickens, with picking them up and hugging them and having them sit on me. And that was really nice. And that was also the year when we started to explore hedgerow booze. So here you can see an example of gorse wine, which we looked at and tried to make. And now that's something that's part of our everyday life. We do this all the time. And it's nice to look back at the beginnings of that. There's the herb bed and some garden trousers that I made, sitting with the chickens next to the herb bed. And it was also when we started to cut down lots of things to try and dry them in the kitchen. So it was fresh harvests, and it was also drying herbs and things like that. And Lulu helping with getting rid of leaves that we didn't really want and things like that. But we did harvest some things, and here I am harvesting just a bunch of random overgrown greens, and my shirt says I have no clue why I'm out of bed. And there was a lot of that year. But we did get some small harvests, and we enjoyed them all the more for it, and we really relished those occasions when I could make it outside and I could be with the vegetables. And it was one of those times when I really felt the need to be with them and do that as well, and to find a way to make that part of our everyday life, no matter my health, to really try and integrate it into lovely green muffins, as you can see there, into tons and tons of rocket that we made into pesto, and bring in the flowers from the garden more to brighten up the house, and to start drying herbs and things. And this is really when we tipped over into thinking of living this way, this quiet way, this way where we make a lot of things, we make as much as we can, herbs and ice cubes, things like that, where we really try to be as home-based as possible. And I must say that's been a joyful thing and a delightful thing. And here's a nice picture where the hedges are higher and higher, hiding the summer garden, and growing lots of peas up the chicken house. That was a good thing that year. Just lots of sunny snapshots from around the garden. That's on the days where my energy permitted. That's where I'd spend my time. Spend my time with the animals, with the plants, enjoying little views like that, enjoying the flowers, enjoying the vegetables, and bringing them inside whenever I could. And when I wasn't able to, I'd sit by the open window, sometimes with the pets, sometimes on my own, and look at it. And this is the beginning of the fern-free food garden. We have a lot of daylilies in the garden. We don't like them. They're toxic to cats, so we try and give them away whenever we can. And that year, we put out this bucket by the front of the house, by the lane, and just said, please help yourselves. And passerbys did. And that was really the start of us growing things for other people, giving them away, and thinking of the joy in that as well. We started to take more shots of our harvests, of our flowers, and of our food as well, and started to enjoy that more. And then there's a long period where I don't have any garden pictures at all. Seamus built this bed, and I didn't have anything to do with it, and I barely got to see it because I wasn't very well. And I distinctly remember coming out of that day. It was potato harvest day, and it was one of those days where I hadn't been able to get out much at all. And I dragged myself out, and we found a toad, and it was amazing. And it was a huge toad, and it was lovely, and I held it, and it made me so happy and sustained me for a really long time. And I even dug out some potatoes, which we had grown in tyres that year, and that was such a welcome harvest towards I feel like the end of the year, because our years start in August, towards the end of a long and difficult year. Good apple harvest. There's the next pictures are all the usual apples and where they go and where we store them. There's just apples in these boxes, apples in cabinets, apples in drawers, apples in big baskets, apples in sieves and bowls, and just apples everywhere. And very quickly, this book here, the booze book that the gorse recipe was from earlier, became our best friend, and we made cider from that recipe. That was a good year. And we also picked some elderberries to use in tea and things like that. And we started to ripen our green tomatoes a bit more and to enjoy those, and to dry herbs in the kitchen. You can see them hanging up there. And just enjoying the space. There's Nigel exploring the chicken enclosure, the butterfly, and a late sunflower, and a nice rose, and lots of apples everywhere. And that's my memory of that autumn, that I wasn't able to do much, but there were apples. There were so many apples, and I managed to get out and take pictures of the apples ever so often and enjoy them. We have 6, 7 different apple trees, and they all come in at different times, and they all taste different, but they're all lovely. And it's the year that I really fell in love with the apples, and eating an apple was one of the few things I was able to do regularly, and that was really nice. And sitting with the chickens, of course. That was important too. And we made cider as the garden started to turn into autumn. It's pretty overgrown there because we haven't been able to deal with hedges and things. And there's some late tomatoes that we're harvesting. And I was able to harvest some very welcome chard there as well, and roast some pumpkins. And then we got a new shed, largely as a wood store for our heating. It was good to have a shed. Seamus built the base for it and put up the shed himself. And it was one of those moments of confidence building where we realised we could do more than we thought we could. I just watched, but he did it all. And these are shots from late autumn, from harvest time, being outside on a rare occasion, enjoying the sunshine. But again, mainly it was this view from the window, seeing the garden, and now it looks very much like a useful garden. There's a bit of chart there. I'm tired, but I'm very happy. And again, enjoying the view. And that winter, George got a new companion. His previous companions had died, and he was getting on a bit, and we thought we'd bring him inside and make him a house rabbit. It was a very cold winter. So we brought him in, and we got Martha, who's the rabbit we still have. And they were free-range house rabbits, and they were mad, and we loved it. And it was just such a joy to watch in the winter. I'd sit with them a lot and just watch them do their thing. Martha was friendlier in those days. She was still a really young rabbit. She didn't growl and she didn't bite, and she was much nicer than she is now. But now we enjoy spending time next to each other rather than in close proximity. And you can see that's how the garden ended up that year, with the tyres and the beds sunken down. We didn't top them up, we didn't feed them. And the following year, we took apart these wooden contraptions. You can see that they're falling apart already. We started building our long no-dig beds on the ground, because these had served their purpose. So the last few pictures here are all 2019. They're the very beginning before the videos. And there's Nigel looking really happy. I'm dealing with some strawberry runners. I'm delighted to be able to be outside at that point, moving strawberries into tyres, planting out more of them, dealing with more ivy and overgrown stuff, hugging chickens, and the final picture is the usual spring cabbage. It was a really manky one that year, but it had been a really difficult year. So we're very pleased to have that cabbage at all. And then that is really when things changed and my health started to get a bit better. I started to get a bit of energy back, started to be able to read and think more, and started to be able to plan the garden better. Between that and hitting upon no dig, that's really kicked us into gear massively and took us from that to growing about 85% of what we eat, I would think. And it's been a long journey, but it's also been a quick one in many ways. We're sort of on the way, and then we couldn't really do it, and then we picked up quite rapidly. And now most of the space that you see is food, and we're looking forward to growing an awful lot of it this year. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've enjoyed this long video series of how we got from 2013 to when the videos kick in at the beginning of 2019, of how it took us a really long time to figure out what to do with the space, of how to use our time and energy well, of how to learn about what we were doing. And yeah, it's been a privilege sharing this with you.